After working with creatives for the last 11 years, I've heard one statement more than any other. I hate marketing. I get it. It can be painful trying to figure out how to market your book or movie or comic. When I started podcasting, I had no clue how to do any of it. I was afraid of doing it wrong, looking like an idiot or making a marketing mistake that I could not recover from. It can be paralyzing. Sound familiar? If it does, let me see if I can help you. I got my MBA in marketing, so you don't have to. Sign up for a free session today to talk about your marketing goals and to see if we're a good fit. If nothing else, you'll get some insights that might ease your mind. Go to southgatesmallbusiness.com and sign up for a free session today. Welcome to Alley Chats. I'm your host, Rob Southgate. Alley Chats is a virtual artist alley featuring interviews with artists, filmmakers, podcasters, writers, really any creative person you might find at a pop culture convention. My goal is to help draw attention to cool people and to hopefully help them get some new fans. I want this podcast to raise up these amazing people and to inspire you, the listener, to chase your dreams as well. You can follow Alley Chats on Facebook and join the conversation. I'll add more social media in the future, but for now, that's the best place to interact with me. You can also email me directly if you would like to be a guest or have a guest suggestion. My email is rob@smgpods.com. Today's guest is Edmund Stone. He's a writer of horror and fantasy that heralds from a quaint river town in the Ohio Valley. And he's a guest at the Books and Brews event coming up this August 3rd in Evanston, Illinois. There's a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. Here's Edmund. Edmund, welcome to the show. I am thrilled to talk to you, mainly because you're in the Ohio Valley, and I know what weirdness happens there, but we'll get into some of that. We'll get into some of that for sure. So let's start by, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about yourself?
All right, my name is Edmund Stone, and I've been a writer since, probably what you would more or less call professional writer since 2016. My first novel was Tent Revival, came out in 2021, and it is part of the Indie Authors Brawl. So it's a contender this year.
Awesome! Hey, congratulations!
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That book is, that book was wild. When I wrote it, I had no idea what I was doing, not even a clue. It took me forever to write the actual thing. But once I got it out, then the follow up and all that, the sequels came out pretty quick after that. Since then, I've had, let's see how many, 6 books, I think. Yeah, I think that's right. I have another novel. Yeah. I
was going to say, according to what I'm looking at here, it looks like 6 novels after that. Yeah.
yes. Novels. Now,
yes.
Technically, I have a couple of short story collections too. So those are before the novel.
Sure.
I also have 2 novels. One is with beta readers, and the other one's more or less beta readers too. Very rough drafts on those. Hopefully, I'll be getting art teams together in the near future for those 2. I've also got a spinoff coming for Tent Revival, so that's another project I'm working on.
Oh my gosh,
I got a lot going on, definitely.
So that'll be book 1.5 of the Rebecca mythos, or something like that.
Yeah,
something like that, or alternate reality. You put one backwards.
Yeah, it's actually more like a prequel, more or less, but it's a whole different cast of characters and everything. Just the town of Salt Flat is the same and things like that. So you'll see a lot of similarities if you've read Tent Revival, but it's not exactly the same. So it's definitely different.
So okay, and your newest book is Delilah. Now, is that a standalone from the others?
No, it is actually the 3rd book in a series.
Okay.
Within a 3-part horror. That's the one I have. That's the one I released last year. That book has 3 distinct stories in it, actually. So it's more like a collection of short stories.
Okay.
But yeah, but the first story in that kind of is more or less a standalone. It ends there, and I had no intentions of making it a sequel or anything. The other 2 I left open ended to make them like sequels. So Hurt is the second one in that, and that in turn becomes the sequel to or Punish becomes the sequel to that story, to Hurt. Delilah is the sequel to the third story in the book, which is The Devil's Concubine. And then what I just did, but those 2 are connected. I mean, they're sequels, but they're connected. So
Sure.
I made it a whole series, and
I
there'll be
feel
more.
like your writing is kind of like that movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like you're just kind of
Yeah,
like I've got
yeah,
14 trilogies, but they all tie together,
yeah,
but they
pretty much.
don't. And I want it to be a standalone. And you know what? Nothing wrong
Yeah,
with that. I love that. So
yeah. I never go in with a plan ever. So I just kind of make it happen, and then there it is. And then all of a sudden, hey, this is a series. All right, let's make it another series.
all right, let's go. So what got you started as a writer? I mean, you said that you started really in 2016. What inspired
Yeah.
you?
Well, I mean, I've more or less have been a writer all my life. I mean, like when I was in high school, I wanted to write. I took journalism. I was big into it. Got into college. Was thinking about becoming a English teacher, or history teacher, something like that, and continuing my writing, but ended up going a different path because at the time there wasn't a whole lot of job opportunity there. So I went into occupational therapy and became an occupational therapy assistant. So I've been doing that for quite a while, and that definitely pays the bills and makes a good day job. 2016, I just at that point, it's really no one thing that made it happen. It was just more of a, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's just, I need to do it. And I really always wanted to do it. Had tons of story ideas, never really followed through with it. So in 2016, I joined a writers group called The Right Practice. I jump in there. I met some really good friends, Justin Boot being one of them. Anyway, got in there, got it back into horror, something I hadn't written in years since I was
Hmm.
probably a teenager. So I got back into horror. And then once I did that, it just everything clicked. It just all the stories started clicking. I had poetry, short stories, all kinds of stuff that came out. Um, but then the goal in 2016 was to eventually write a novel or be published or something along those lines. I ended up publishing in 2017 my first 2 poems. Then after that, it turned into short stories. Then I started getting paid for those, so those actually worked out pretty good. But then I mean, it just rolled from there. Like I said, the novel was always in my head, but I wasn't quite ready for it, so I kept working on it, and then I would scrap it, work on it again, shelf it for a while. But that was the novel tent revival, and I just kept getting ideas from my little hometown here, and just started working more and more on it. Um, and it just evolved. It was just a strange experience. But like I said, the short stories came first, and then I started evolving into the novel. But once you start a novel, I can tell you any writer, once you get one under your belt, then it's off. Then you can't do anything else but novels. Really, for me anyway.
That's awesome. So, okay.
But that's kind of what got me started. I'm just one of those people that, like with my books, when I decide to do something, I do it.
Yeah,
Wherever it ends up, that's where it'll be.
that's where it's going
And
to go.
then I hope it ends up as something great. And it's done pretty well so far. I mean, I'm pretty happy with what I've accomplished. So,
So there were 2 questions in there that I've been wanting
oh,
to
sorry.
ask, and it was something you touched on. And I'm like, oh, I got to ask this, but I'm going to ask the softball question, the easy question first. Okay, what is it about horror that drew you in? Why did you go to horror? You said I played with it, then I went away from it, and now, bam! And it looks like there's no turning back now. It looks like. So, what was it about horror?
Horror just has it's just hard to explain. It has a an excitement to it that other writing, in my opinion, doesn't have. And when you get into that and you start, you start off a story, you start building characters and all these things, but then you all of a sudden you start thinking, I mean, in my opinion, anyway, I start thinking that sense of dread and what's coming and
Yeah.
what could happen, and that part of it just always thrills me. It makes horror work for me on a level that keeps me writing. Basically, if I were to write something else, I feel like I would get to a certain point and I would be bored with it and I wouldn't even want to do it. But with horror, I get to that point and I think, wow, here comes the excitement. This is really getting good. And this is, the creepier and the better I can make it, even, that draws me in and keeps me writing. Really, really gets me going. So that's kind
Yeah.
of where it does for me. It's the excitement and the draw that brings me in to get that big climactic finish that I want.
Now, were you one of those kids that loved horror, or were you a kid that was so scared of it that you were drawn like a moth to a flame?
Exactly. I was definitely the kid who was scared to death of it, and I was probably honestly, I was probably about 11 or 12 years old before I actually fully watched a horror film. And I
Okay, what
really,
was it? What was the first one?
oh, okay. It was The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing.
Oh,
It's a
God, you can't
pretty
go
good one to
wrong
watch.
there.
Yeah, but that was the one that when it had been out for a while whenever I watched it, but I was like I was sucked into it, and when I did, I was just like, oh man, this is great. I love this. I love this. So from that point on, I really tried to find the scariest and the craziest. Then it went from The Thing to like Creep Show to all the Friday. Yeah, then I started on Friday 13th, all the good slasher films, everything. Um, Really, as far as that's pretty much where I started with horror in general. Um, Horror reading now was a little different. I was a little bit older there. I was probably about 16, about 16, 17 before I really started into horror reading. Starting with Stephen King, short stories mostly. But the one that really, really, really got me into it and drew me into writing and reading horror was Clive Barker. I was
Ah,
a huge Barker fan.
was it the short
Uh,
stories, the books of blood, or was it the
yeah,
one of the
definitely.
novels?
It was
Yeah,
the
those
books of
books
blood.
of blood,
Uh,
man.
oh, that took it to a different level.
That was the
That was
first time I feel like I binge read, where I like read the
oh,
first one
absolutely. Hmm.
in like one sitting, and then I remember we were at a wedding, and I had book two with me,
Hmm.
and I went in. I was like, oh, you know what? Like before we went, we're getting ready, and I sat down to. I was in the bathroom. You know what I'm doing, and I'm reading a little bit, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I just read an entire short story sitting there. Like my legs are numb. I can't
Yeah.
stop. We got to go to this wedding. Yeah, Clive
Oh, yeah.
Barker owes me for that.
Yeah. He and it really honestly just like you said. I mean, it was so exciting that it drew me in, and it was like watching a movie. Um, so that was probably my first delve into the horror reading community as in general. Read a lot of horror after that, all the way up through till I used to read in the '90s when I was basically raising my family. I was reading a lot of horror and also fantasy, a little bit of sci-fi, everything then. But well, horror always remained something that I enjoyed, definitely.
Want more shows like this? We've got a lot more on the Southgate Media Group Patreon page. Some free, some paid. Plus, there's exclusive content for subscribers only. Follow the link in the show notes or look up Southgate Media Group on Patreon and check out the cool stuff we're doing over there. You won't be sorry. On August 3rd, 2024, Books of Horror is presenting Books and Brews at Double Clutch Brewing Company in Evanston, Illinois. There will be over 40 horror authors for a book signing and meetup from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. that day. Meet your favorite authors, discover new authors, meet Books of Horror friends in real life, including the author I'm talking with on this podcast. Oh, and I'll be there too. This is an all-ages event. Food, alcohol, and non-alcoholic beverages will be available. No outside food or drinks will be allowed. Search for Books of Horror Presents Books and Brews on Facebook events for more information, or click on the link in the show notes. I hope to see you there. Now, do you think that by reading, fantasy and sci-fi and all that, do you think that influences what you do now? Or are you like, yeah, no, I'm really in a horror vein? Do you find that for an author, it's good to read these other genres?
No, yeah, absolutely. Like if you look at like Tent Revival and actually that whole series is more in the cosmic horror vein. So there's a lot of science fiction crossover, especially with Lost Hope, the final one. It really takes a hard science fiction stance. Really, it's kind of like Aliens and all that mixed together.
The Thing, all that kind of like
all that,
yeah,
all that. Really has that hard sci-fi cosmic horror mix going on there. There's a lot of past and future realities going on, things like that. Old gods and mystical creatures. That
everything
kind
you're
of stuff
saying sounds good to me. I like all of that. Were you a Lovecraft fan? Is that where the cosmic horror thing kind of crept in?
A little bit, yeah. I definitely. I think though Lovecraft was something that was later for me. As I got older, I got into more. I think it was mainly because I started reading more King and reading his bigger novels and stuff like that. And then when I heard about the cosmic horror influence on some of those, especially like It and some of those novels, then I started looking more into that. And so probably Lovecraft wasn't an early influence of mine, but a later influence. The earliest would have probably have been Edgar Allan Poe, that kind of thing. Read a lot of Poe.
Yeah. I remember that was something we were taught in school, and I was the weird kid that we had to read The Raven, and we had to read maybe The Pit and the Pendulum. And then I went and I got there was a big collection of Poe that was real popular that year. And I got that for like my Christmas or for birthday or something. And I was that weird kid that I'd bring it to school, and I'm just sitting there reading like, you guys have to read Mask of the Red Death. It's amazing. Like I'm reading these things going like, how are you not reading this? And they're,
right.
I was the weirdo.
And that kind of goes, they won't do it. They won't, a lot of people don't really understand that because they don't know that connection. And once they find it, it's great. But it takes them a little while.
Have you ever been out to the Poe Festival?
No.
Oh, did I say something you don't know about?
I haven't. I mean, where is it in?
It's in Massachusetts, and it's called the Poe House Festival, and it is basically they've preserved the room that he lived in up to his death, and it's really cool. And then I interviewed the woman who runs Poe House right now. She's a horror author. What a shock! And she kind of fell into this position, and they do a Poe Festival every year. And it's not like a big conference. It's like they kind of take over the streets, and they have some vendors and they have things, but they do an award show, which this is what I think you would find interesting, where it's not like only interpretations of Poe, but like you get awards for Poe, how people use Poe in pop culture. So if there's a Simpsons episode that has like a whole thing about the Raven, let's say, or the Telltale Heart, somebody might nominate that for one of the awards. If you've written a book or a short story that ties in, it might get nominated. Music, it's everything. It's everything. Yeah, you should totally check it out. If I remember, I will send you a link to Poe House.
Okay, sounds good.
I think you dig it.
Okay. I definitely think I would. Definitely.
See, I'm getting a beat on you here. So you mentioned all these movies. Before I get into more writing stuff, I'm gonna put you on the hot seat here. Give me your top 3 horror movies.
Oh boy.
And we'll say right now. We'll say right now in this moment, because I know every time somebody does that to me, I'm like, ask me again in 10 minutes, it's going to change. But right now, when I ask you that question, what are the first
Yeah.
three that come to mind?
Um, Hellraiser will
Hmm.
always be my top one. And I put The Thing in there just because it was one of my favorites from way back, and I've watched it again, and it seems like there was a remake to it, but I don't remember watching that. But that
It's
watched that
kind of
one.
a prequel, and it's not good.
Hmm.
It's not John
Okay, that's what I
Carpenter
thought.
either. So
Yeah, I've heard that before. Let me think. There's a lot of great slasher films. I mean, that were fantastic. But the way I look at it is probably the one that um I would say like creep me out the most
yeah,
was probably Aliens. Probably Aliens.
the
Because
second one.
and I mean Alien, yeah, right. And Aliens would be considered maybe science fiction, but it had a lot of, I mean, it's great horror in it. And it
Oh
was in
yeah,
space and it was lonely and, you know, all those crazy things that went,
they're
and it's definitely
isolated.
influenced me over the years. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
actually, that scene in Aliens when they're watching, they're playing back from the first movie when they're watching the blip move, and you can't see
Oh
where
yeah,
the terror is. But then you
right.
see there's like 100 of them. I still
Yeah.
remember sitting in the theater like incredibly uncomfortable. Like,
Oh yeah.
oh
Oh yeah.
no,
Absolutely.
what is that? Well, those are good choices, man.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
how have you seen horror change over the years? Is there anything that you've noticed about it? And do you think it'll continue to
Um,
evolve?
oh, I definitely think it'll continue to evolve. But I probably what I've seen, gosh. I mean, the whole, you know, the whole we've actually come through an evolution recently. I mean, with the whole we went through the whole zombie phase, which was, you know, everybody was all about zombies and vampires, really. And those old tropes came back. But now it seems like we're going more through the, like the dark supernatural, like exorcists and things along that lines. I see a lot of that. And it's interesting. I like that. But to me, I'm not sure. I could see, I mean, like I was talking about the science fiction, the cosmic horror, and that kind of thing. I'm seeing a lot of that, and a lot of interesting ways that people are making that connection and working with that. I can think of a couple of come to mind. Andrew Nauberg with Golotech, fantastic book. I love the way he connects. He makes his like more of it's an apocalyptic kind of thing with with a dystopian future, but there's also that connection of monsters and cosmic horror that really connects or really makes it it just steps it up a level, makes it very
Yeah.
creepy and very dark, and I just really like that book. That's one good example. And then I see the books like The Exorcist House by Nick Roberts. I mean, that
Mm,
book is, you know,
yeah.
definitely the connection to the Exorcist with the backwoods exorcism and all that kind of stuff. I really connected to that one because well, Nick is originally from West Virginia and I'm from Kentucky, so the kind of the way he he made that world work is very familiar to me, you know, very familiar to me as a person and a writer. It came home personally to me because of because of the environment he wrote it in. So I really like that one. But those are two good examples, I think, of the kind of the evolution of horror to where it's going more to that dark supernatural or cosmic kind of look. And to me, if it keeps evolving that way, I'll be happy because that's my meat and potatoes. I
That's your
love that kind
jam,
of
huh?
stuff right there. So yeah, definitely. So that will work for me.
But don't you think that horror is a reflection of society very often? Like for a while, everything was cosmic and or
Yeah.
alien, and it was because of
Mm-hmm.
xenophobia and that was being throughout our
Mm-hmm.
society. And right now, there's the enemy within. That's why we're seeing exorcist stuff again, where everybody's feeling like I can't control this evil that's growing here.
Yeah.
Don't you think
Yeah.
there's I mean, that's where I see the evolution is whatever we're kind of baseline scared of at the moment, it kind of becomes the
Yeah.
thing, not the
Yeah.
thing.
No, I can see that. I can see that. Well, another thing too is the whole serial killer thing is kind of coming back a little bit too, with all the true crime that's out there, and
Yeah.
everybody afraid of those things. They're afraid of the horror that's right beside them, and
Yeah, it's why
they
what
don't
is
they
it,
don't
the
see that coming.
Strangers, like the Strangers is
Yeah,
there's a new
there you
Strangers
go.
movie, and it's like I don't know about you, but I thought the Strangers was terrifying.
It was it was very terrifying.
You know, there's
That
one
movie
line
definitely
in
scared me.
there's one line in the first movie that is one of the scariest lines ever in a film. And it's
Hmm.
when Liv Tyler says, "Why me?" And she's crying. She's like, "Why did you do this?" And the guy just turns
Oh yeah.
around. You never see his face, and he just goes, "Because you were home." That
Hmm.
is the single most terrifying idea I've
Yeah.
ever seen on a screen. And here it's back once again. Maybe it's a reflection of society or how we're feeling about stuff.
Might be.
It's awful. Thanks for bringing this up and making me
Might
feel
be.
terrible today. Uh,
Well, actually, the good thing about that though is I'm bringing up. I kind of brought that up as part of what I see, but also as a good segue into a project I'm working on with
ah,
three other authors.
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Okay, it's called "Hurt People, Hurt People." So the whole
Oh my
concept
God, that's a
is,
great name.
yeah,
Fabulous.
I know. That's the brainchild of Ben Young. He came up with that name and everything, and we've all jumped right on it. It's Ben Young, me, Lee Kinney, and Mike Salt, and
Great.
it's a collaboration. Yeah, it's collaboration between all four of us. And where we each one writes an individual story, but they have a connection to them, and the connection is that the person who hurt someone, the next person is touched by that and they start hurting people. And then the
Oh,
next one hurts and then they start hurting people. So it's all connected together that way. That's the string that
wow.
holds it together.
That's
But it's
another
all like
awful thought.
serial killer based. It is. It really is.
Yeah.
But it's a good one. Ben has pretty much finished up his story, and I'm very close to finishing up mine. And I really like where my character's going. Really like it.
Oh,
It's
I
one of my
can't wait to
favorite
read it.
characters I think I've ever written.
That sounds awesome. I can't wait to read it. So, okay, we're going
Yeah.
to shift gears
Okay.
because we're going to run out of time, and I don't want to run out of time before I ask you. You're in the Ohio Valley, you grew up in Kentucky. You've got paranormal
Yes.
stuff happening everywhere you look.
Hmm.
You ever encounter any weirdness? How about the Kentucky
Um,
Goblins? Do they live in your backyard?
I don't know about the goblins. There's the lizard people, right? You hear about those,
Yeah,
the
oh,
Ohio
yeah.
River lizard people. Yeah. The I found out one thing. Now this is very strange. Um, my wife tends to have a every once in a while. I honestly think sometimes that things like this are just drawn to her. But she woke up at the place where I live right on the Ohio River now.
Okay.
Um, I used to live close to it, but now I live right on it. I have a cottage, and it just looks over the river, and it's real pretty down there and everything. But she woke up one night, saw a white lady pecking on the window, like on our door that's outside to our deck. And I said, "You were awake?" And she said, "Oh, I was awake." She said, "I wasn't dreaming." I said, "You really
Oh,
saw
boy.
that?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, you sure it wasn't like somebody in the neighborhood?" She said, "No, no, it was a white, misty thing that came out of the fog and was pecking on the door."
Holy
So I was like,
cow.
So, yeah, I know. And so I started checking out white ladies, and they're all over the place. That
All
folklore
over
has
the
been going
place.
on forever. But there is some of that in the Ohio River and in the valley here from old, like I think it was like old folklore from either it was either Irish or German folklore, but it goes way back. But there was some of that here,
And
and
don't you
I
wonder
just
about
thought that
stuff
was
like
very
that? Like whether
interesting.
they're tulpas because of the folklore or whether and a tulpa is scary enough, but then is
Absolutely.
it which came first, chicken or the egg, white lady or the egg? You
Hmm.
don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
you
yeah,
don't.
plus don't you have stuff like Frogman and that other weird stuff? There's a lizard people, the Frogman, the Kentucky Goblins, like all
Yeah.
that weird stuff.
Oh yeah.
Mothman isn't far
I
from
mean,
you.
yeah, I was going to say, yeah, the Mothman's not that far from here, so that's another one you got to look into.
You're gonna have to ask your wife. She
The
was like, I woke up and the porch light was on and Mothman was flying around it.
Yeah,
That's a
right. I
bad
need to ask
joke.
her about that. Maybe she can think.
That's a bad joke. So,
And the spider
okay.
got him. How about that?
Right. Okay, Edmund. First of all, I'm going to say a couple of quick things. Got to do some business. You are at Books and Brews, which is going to be in Evanston, Illinois, at Double Clutch Brewing Company. That's August 3rd. That's what prompted us to get together, which I am so happy we did. I can't wait to read your stuff. I'm excited to meet you. I'll be there. In fact, they've given me a table.
Oh, awesome.
It's interesting.
Oh,
So
great.
come meet Edmund, buy books, get him to sign books. I bet you could even take a selfie, show up in all white and peck at him and really freak him out.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please. Right. I will put the links in the show notes for Books and Brews. I will also put Edmund's link tree in there so you can follow him, subscribe to his newsletter, go to his website, buy his books, do all the stuff, because that's what really helps authors. Rates and reviews. If you buy his book on Amazon,
Absolutely.
Review it. That helps. Same thing on Goodreads. Review it. It helps.
Yes.
Okay, before we exit, you already mentioned this new book coming up. Do you have anything else coming up? Any signings or appearances or anything?
Books and Brews, and then my next big convention is the Tennessee Book Review, TBR Con in Knoxville. That is September, first weekend of September, I'm pretty sure. But that one's turned out to be a really good one. They've got some big guests there and everything. The rest of my stuff, I have a signing in the Chillicothe area, Chillicothe, Ohio, and I'm pretty sure it's the following weekend after TBR Con. It's in September, but it's Wheatberry Books is the name of that place. I'll be doing a signing there. In between there, I really don't have anything planned, and if I did, it would be local here. So I'm sure.
Sure. Well, the best way is for people to follow you, follow your social media. You'll post when you're going to be at things and come out and meet them, because I had a wonderful time talking to you, Edmund, and I'm sure they will too. So buy his books.
Thank you.
There we go. I did my job for you. Thanks, Edmund.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It would really help me out if you would rate and review this show on whatever platform you use to listen to this podcast. Good reviews help others find the show, which ultimately helps the people I've interviewed get more exposure. You can connect with me on social media or via email. All the links are found in the show notes. If you like this show, you'll like other shows from Southgate Media Group as well, such as Read Between the Lines, a podcast featuring insightful interviews with some of the hottest authors out there, or Go Fund This, a podcast where we interview people about their amazing crowdfunding projects. You can find our shows wherever you listen to podcasts, so give them a try. And if you like what you hear, don't forget to rate and review our shows. It really helps other people find them and keep our team inspired. Alley Chats is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks again for listening to Alley Chats.